here and also have, among others, my former student, Jane Clark, and I'm sorry, Charles, I believe you're here. Jane Clark Charles. And several other of my former students have come here to Great Hearts. And so it's great to be here myself. Now, I'm going to be speaking about one of the main themes of my own research in economics. I'm trained in economic history. I've looked at the economics of technological change, both causes and consequences of technological change. And in particular, I've focused on issues of how technical standards originate and how they might change, or how, in cases there might be a diversity of technology in a way that, in contexts where standardization would be useful. And so I wrote the book, literally, on track gauge, called Tracks Across Continents, Paths Through History, the Economic Dynamics of Standardization in Railway Gauge. This was originally my doctoral dissertation and later emerged as a book. So on my slide here, I show what we mean by track gauge. It's the distance. This is a cross-section of a set of wheels on a train car, and this being the rails. The gauge being the distance between the inside faces of the rails. And track gauge determines whether what trains can run on what tracks, essentially. So having a standardized track gauge is a key factor in integrating a railway network across a continent. Okay, so now the broader context or issue or significance of this could be expressed in two words: history matters. And what we mean by this is that some noteworthy features of the economy depend on history rather than on such factors as current technology and current market conditions. Now, maybe I should ask, how many of you have taken a college course in economics? Okay, good number of you. Jane has had a course from me, actually, more than one course.
Or two.
As you may know, and in fact, those who haven't had a course may be aware of this as well, that economists normally expect that markets will yield efficient outcomes, efficient in the sense of generating the highest potential payoffs. And why do economists generally expect this? Well, basically it's because higher payoffs would generate greater incentives, so that one would expect that there ought to be some profit opportunity or some other sort of incentive for corporations or maybe pioneering individuals, inventors, whatever, entrepreneurs, to take technology in a direction that would yield the highest payoff. And so we might expect that to happen. But it doesn't always happen. In fact, with track gauge, we note that it didn't. And let me express some of the conditions under which an efficient outcome might not happen. For example, if entrepreneurs don't know the future payoffs, the choices that they have to make at an early point in time, before the technical possibilities of a new technology have revealed themselves through the way the markets develop, through the choices the consumers make, and so forth. And what if the choices that are made early, become difficult or costly to change? Furthermore, what if changes in technology or in the market environment make a difference over time in what is efficient? That is to say that the technology or the technical choice that might be efficient or optimal early on might not be what's best later on. And finally, what if some entrepreneurs have better foresight than others? That might make a difference who takes the lead in developing new technology, whether it's somebody who has the better ideas or somebody who has the worse ideas. Whether it's a visionary maybe like Steve Jobs, or in some cases, not that his choices have always been right, but sometimes he has been quite foresighted and things that happen fortuitously in what he's done. Or if technology goes in a different direction. Now, a term that's used here, which is almost synonymous with the phrase that history matters, is the term path-dependent or path dependence. Path-dependent means that the path of history, the path of development of a technology may depend on what happens earlier. That is to say, that you can't just choose at a particular point in time what direction you might want to go. The choices, or there may have been key earlier choices that constrain what can be done later. So let's look at a couple examples here. Before we get to railroad track gauge, I want to just mention a couple other examples. One being the QWERTY keyboard. This is probably familiar to all of you. It's the way that well, in old days, pre-computer days, in ancient history, typewriters followed this keyboard. And now computers do as well. I have a QWERTY keyboard and I keep it right in front of me here. Anybody know when the QWERTY keyboard arose? It's around 1870, early 1870s. It was, the keyboard was arranged this way to minimize key jamming on an early typewriter design, and I mean very early typewriter design. And it was a design that was soon discarded. In fact, this design was discarded at a time when there were only a few hundred typewriters being used in the world. Well, as typewriter technology changed, typewriter manufacturers came to offer, well, a variety of keyboard designs, which were designed hopefully to enable people to type a bit faster. However, none of these designs gained much market share. Instead, the QWERTY keyboard continued to have a lead in market share. Alternatives are up to about roughly 10% or so more efficient than the QWERTY keyboard. So there's a question here, why don't we switch? Why don't we switch to a better keyboard design? Here's an example of a better keyboard design. It's called the Dvorak Simplified Keyboard, which was patented in 1936. You notice, among other things, all the vowels are in the home row for the left hand, and consonants that tend to be typed either before or after a vowel are frequently on the home row on the right-hand side. And the keyboard was designed so that with greater frequency, people would be alternating hands and alternating fingers in the order in which they typed letters and words. For example, with QWERTY, you have the C, D, and E keys all being typed by the same finger, and these letters often appear as sequencing words, so you have to jump the same finger up and down to type a word instead of being able to alternate fingers and, for that matter, alternate hands, both of which correlate with being able to type faster. As far as I know, the world speed records in typing are still all on the Dvorak Simplified Keyboard. Although there are actually some newer designs, so-called chord systems. That is to say, to type a letter, you actually get two keys or two buttons or something at the same time, one with each hand or something. And so that you can actually, just with keeping each of the fingers at the top of one button, you can sort of, by typing two at once or maybe three at once or something like this, you can handle all the letters. And those actually can go quicker, but that's a rather substantially different concept. And in terms of a standard style of keyboard, something like the Dvorak design, or there's some others that are roughly as efficient as that, are actually more efficient. But we don't switch. We haven't switched, even though this has been around for 80 years now. Another example, Britain's silly little bobtailed coal cars. Now the term silly little bobtailed coal car was coined by Thorstein Veblen. Anybody hear of Thorstein Veblen? He was an eccentric American economist in the late 19th century and early 20th century. He wrote a book called, in 1915, called Imperial Germany and the Industrial Revolution, in which he talked about how Germany was able to industrialize faster than Britain simply because it started later and could avoid some of the mistakes that Britain had made, including the design of the railway system. Here we're not talking about track gauge. Here we're talking about the style of cars in use. So Britain, for over a century actually, they standardized on a design for cars carrying coal, in particular from the mines to the cities and so forth where coal was being used, which were very short and of small capacity. And it turned out that this sort of design was fit very well with the technology of the 1840s, but there was an awful lot of technical improvement in railways over the rest of the 19th century and into the 20th century. But this coal car so-called silly little bobtail coal cars, as they were labeled in 1915, were in use until 1950. And what were the problems? Well, first of all, they're too small. They were poorly maintained. Actually, what was done is that the collieries, the coal mines, would each own their own fleet of cars, and the railway companies were required to carry these cars to their destinations. The braking systems, lubrication systems were obsolete. And the railways were not really able to properly manage how these cars were used on the railways. This was partly because of the laws that were set up, presumably to protect the collieries from exploitation by the railroads. Well, calculations based on technical data from about a century or so ago, in the 19-teens or maybe around 1920 or so, it was estimated that the cost of coal deliveries would have fallen by more than half, and that the social rate of return on investment for making the switchover would have been 24%. Now, I'm not sure how many of you have a business education. Rate of return on investment means if you put out an investment, what's going to be the annual payback? So the idea is you get an annual payback of 24% of the outlay of what it would have cost for just junking all these old cars and going to modern, larger cars that were owned and maintained, managed by the railways themselves. So this would be, if you have an investment that pays you back 24% a year, year on year, year after year after year, that's, you recover your initial cost in just over 4 years, and it goes on forever, or at least until the new system becomes obsolete. Now, a social rate of return means that this is not a rate of return which is available to any one private investor, because for any one company, for example, because what would work for one company would depend upon other companies making complementary changes. This would mean, for example, that the railways would make the changes, the collieries themselves would have to give up their legal right to put their own cars on the tracks and everything like that. And all the facilities for loading coal, for unloading coal, and everything like that along the way, which would be managed by different companies, these would all have to be changed at the same time. And the problem was you couldn't just change one piece of the system without changing the whole system, where there wouldn't be any payback for anybody, or at least not much, not enough to make it work, which is why it didn't happen. It was something of a coordination failure here. And now, for the puzzles for economists here, as I say here, it's a coordination failure. You couldn't get everybody to agree on making a change, which is ultimately a matter of institutions breaking down. Now, we won't go into a lot of what economists mean by institutions here, but we can think of institutions in this case as being a term that encompasses both markets and government action. So we could call this market failure because markets and entrepreneurs couldn't realize individual returns that would make this happen. You can call it government failure because the government didn't change the rules of the game, which would have permitted markets to work better and to solve the problems. What actually happened in around 1950 is that the first Labour Party government after World War II nationalized both the coal mines and the railways. So with everything under common ownership, we were able to how should I put it? To have one entity, in this case the government, which now owned everything, handle everything, and manage everything. All right, but now let's turn to track gauge. Now, this picture shows actually track with two different gauges. So one wheel on this rail, and depending on whether it was a wider or narrower gauge. I think this was from Australia, which has both a 5'3" gauge and a 4'8" gauge. So three-rail track is one way of getting past problems of diversity and gauge. Well, okay. Now, the world standard used on about 57% of the world's railways is 4'8" inches. This width of track was taken from a primitive coal tramway, which was in use starting around 1800 or so. But it was on this, actually a small system of tramways, but only amounting to, I'm not sure, a maybe a couple dozen miles or something. The steam engineer, the steam engine mechanic, really, who was working on this for these collieries, mostly actually maintaining steam engines that would pump water out of the mines to keep the mines from flooding. He also did some early experiments with steam locomotion, and so he, this was a time when there was horses pulling the coal carts along primitive rails, or gravity being used, so coal carts could go down to the waterway. But the engineer working with this also built the world's two first modern railways. The Stockton and Darlington in northern England was opened in 1825, and then the Liverpool and Manchester in 1830. We'll come back to that a little bit later. Now, by the late 1830s, most engineers preferred to use broader gauges for reasons that we'll talk about a little bit later. Nonetheless, this early gauge was never displaced and is used today at 57% of the world's railways. Now, changing engineering views did lead to new gauges in new places. But because new gauges were used in new places, this also led to a costly diversity. So the United States, for example, had 6 different gauges widely used during the 1870s. Britain had 2 main gauges for a while. Australia, Argentina, India, and a number of other countries have multiple gauges today within the country. And more broadly, on an international level, continental Europe and South America have multiple gauges in use, including on routes that would benefit from having a common gauge. So questions arise. Why has costly diversity remained, and how was diversity sometimes resolved? Because, of course, both North America and Britain do have a single standard today. And also there's the question, why the odd gauge of 4 foot 8.5? Well, I've alluded to this a little bit in referring to George Stephenson. Okay, let's look again at track gauge. Again, this is the diagram that I showed earlier. Standardization of gauge means that wheel sets are going to be compatible with track, and if different companies or different national systems are using the same gauge, then you can ship goods across multiple systems much more cheaply. We can come back to the terms path dependence and history matters again. There's going to be path dependence in choice of technical practice. Current practice depends again on past practice, not on what's now optimal. So we have situations where historical gauges are imperfectly adapted to current conditions, and where continuing diversity of practice, which happens today, is possible. Okay, let's show you here the track gauges in use in the world today. These are the most common gauges and the proportion of the world total. I compiled these statistics from a industry source called James World Railways, and also the CIA World Fact Book. So I listed these in order from the narrowest to the broadest. I gave the measures both in the English system of units and the metric system. So we have the 4 foot 8.5 inch gauge used on about 57% of the world total. The slightly broader 5 foot 0 gauge being used in especially in the former Soviet Union. That's where most of this mileage is. And Finland, which used to be part of the Russian Empire before the Soviet Union. And then other gauges less common, a couple of fairly common narrow gauges, 3.5 feet on one hand and 1 meter on the other hand. And then there's the broad gauge of 5 foot 6 or so in India, parts of South America, and the Iberian Peninsula, Spain and Portugal. Looking at track gauges in the world today by region, these are in order of width. This color scheme is the so-called standard gauge, 4 foot 8.5, with narrower gauges down below, broader gauges above. So South Asia with India has a lot of mileage, 5 foot 6. These numbers are actually about 9 years out of date. My book came out in 2009. I think the last data that I checked, I think before putting the book to press was 2007. Actually, there's been some further gauge changes, especially in India, with some of the narrow gauge going away and being converted to the Indian broad gauge. Looking at track gauges used historically, this is on a logarithmic vertical scale to make it work. From 1840 to 2000, we see this is the standard gauge in terms of the miles in use. And you see it's actually gone down a little bit. Whereas this gauge, which is the 5'0" that's used in Russia, has actually gone up a little bit, while the standard gauge has gone down. This is the, actually this covers the range between the meter gauge and the 3'6" gauge. That's actually, if you combine those two gauges together, they would come in second after the Stevenson gauge, or the 4'8.5" gauge. And so forth. One thing to note, I suppose, is broad gauges of 6 foot to 7 foot. By the way, this broadest gauge, 7'0", this was in the Netherlands. Of course, in New York City. Okay, rise in this broad gauge and decline that was gone by the end of the 19th century.